On Wednesday, May 31st, 2023, Jenkins LTS 2.401.1 was released. On today's show, we're going to be talking about a lot of the changes that happened in that and probably a few other things. If you've never been here before, my name is Darren Pope. I'm a developer advocate for CloudBees. And on today's show, much like in many other shows before, I have on Mark Waite. Mark, how are you doing?
Great, Darren. How are you?
Mark is a member of the Jenkins Governance Board, and usually the day after an LTS release, we come on and talk about what all is included in this release. Now, this release, we were talking before we got started, I didn't think it was that big of a deal, and Mark corrected me.
Well, I think it's got some cool components in it, some things that are worth consideration, and it's got a couple of entries in the upgrade guide, and those things inevitably mean please read it and understand it.
And just in case you don't know what Jenkins LTS is, Mark will give you a quick overview of what that is. Mark, why don't you go ahead and take it?
Sure. So the Jenkins project chooses every 12 weeks a baseline. That baseline then is used to create a stable platform on which we will do releases every 4 weeks. So we release 2.401.1. 4 weeks later, we do 2.401.2. 4 weeks after that, we do 2.401.3. Each of those is an increment on that original baseline. Now that baseline has had some backports brought in from later weekly releases, so we choose a weekly release as the baseline, bring in some backports, and then watch that thing and care for it over the course of the next 3 months.
And this is the .1 of that.
It's a .1.
Which is, how can I say this? There's probably no great way to say this. I will always adopt a .1. Mm-hmm. But maybe not in production the day after it was released.
Well, it depends, right?
It depends. Do I need it?
It depends on your level of risk that you accept. It depends on all sorts of things. I adopt the .1s immediately, but I'm also the only consumer of my Jenkins installation.
Right. Same with me.
We adopt the .1s immediately on ci.jenkins.io because it's a good experience, and if there's something wrong, we want to know. But someone who's supporting 100 users may say, I want to test it first myself, and test it first yourself is a good thing too.
Yep. Which, again, like I said, I'm just like you. As soon as that LTS hit yesterday, I was like, oh, great. I can go ahead and upgrade. And I did, and everything's been fine. So why don't we get into...
And hey, the fun there is I spent the last 2 weeks before the release testing the release candidate. And so I compromise, I intentionally choose to test as early as I can. And others may make different choices. It's okay.
Yep. Mark is willing to take that hit for you so you don't have to...
Right.
Actually, the RC this time was reasonably good.
It was quite good. Yeah, I was really proud. I think you were actually involved in one of the people who found a very late breaking problem in it that we fixed. Ultimately, the users of the .1 will never see that problem because you found it, or because it was found and fixed. And that was a fun one because it was a fix that was completely unexpected.
It was unexpected to me too. When I was like, wait, what was that?
What?
Did I see that? Let's take a look at it.
Great.
So here are the release notes. If you've never gone over to the release notes, jenkins.io, go to download, and you'll select on LTS. So in fact, let me just do that, just because. So we'll go back here to the top of Jenkins, click on download, and then on the stable, so on the left-hand side, that's what you want to be on the left-hand side. Well, actually, depending on which way you want to look at it. Left is left, right? Click on changelog, and there you go. All right. Can you believe it's already June, by the way?
Isn't it amazing? It is June. Summer is upon us in the Northern Hemisphere.
So does that mean you only have 6 inches of snow on the ground?
It means I actually have had some lovely bicycle rides. I want to tell you, Darren, I have to tell you before we do this.
Okay.
I did a Bike Your Age event back on May 23rd when I turned a certain number of years old, and I biked my age. Kilometers, not miles, but kilometers.
That's cheating.
No. My kids tell me the day will come when it's going to be meters. So it's really cheating when it's meters.
Okay. We're in the imperial measurements here, so
Exactly.
it should have been that. Okay. Where do you want to start here? Do you want to go through now? Okay, so let's explain this in case you've never been around for one of these .1 releases. So there's two sections usually in the .1. There's a notable changes since, which was the previous LTS, final LTS. So let's sort of put it this way. I treat LTSs a little bit differently than other people say it. So I'll say my definition and then you can refute me. We select a new, and you use the word baseline. So to me, this is a new LTS, but technically it's a new LTS every 4 weeks. But to me, I really think of the .1 as being the new LTS. And then the .2 and the .3 and sometimes the .4 happen along, but that's still part of that LTS. But they're each LTSs. It's weird. Words are hard, right?
Well, but your conceptual model matches with what many users think. 2.387 is an LTS baseline. 2.401 is an LTS baseline. But adding the word baseline actually doesn't help most people understand because unless you're deep inside the Jenkins project, it feels like it's 2.401 the LTS, and it had a .1, a .2, and a .3. And I'm okay with either. The notable changes section of the document is describing changes that were made in the 12 weeks preceding 2.401's use as a baseline. And that's 12 weeks of changes in weeklies. So they tend to be longer. It tends to be a much more significant list than that upper list, because the upper list is things we had to bring back to 2.401 from later releases. So we found a bug in 2.401. We fixed it in 404, but we wanted the fix in the 401 LTS baseline.
Correct. Which, by the way, this was the one that I found.
Yes, yeah, and that was really quite charming because that thing only arrived in 401 and it was quite unexpected, and it's gone in the most recent weekly. So it was a relatively short-lived problem, but important enough, we wanted to be sure it was fixed in 401.1.
Okay, let's ignore that because, again, that was some extra text.
Right.
It wasn't a big deal. Let's talk about some of the big deals here. A lot of this, from my perspective, is, how do I say this? Waxing the paint on the car.
Yeah, it's improving the elegance of the experience, absolutely. And we should look through those kind of things because they matter to people, especially to new users.
So simplifying the names. I actually want to come back to that because we'll A/B that for real. I want to talk about this one here, using a card layout instead of a table for the dashboard on mobile. Now, I saw this yesterday when the release notes came out, but I actually had to run out of the house today for a few minutes, and I figured, okay, I'm actually out of the house. What is that like? And I was sitting there waiting for something, and I jumped on my Zero Trust network, so I was able to connect back into my house because it's one of the first times I've been out of the house since I set it up. I figured, okay, let's go check out my LTS that I have running here in the house. I have a weekly and an LTS that are both running. So I checked out the LTS, and I was on my phone. I was like, oh, wait, this is interesting because I still have an older LTS running. I went over to that. It's like, ooh. So from a mobile perspective, the experience is way, way better, at least in this part of it. So that's a nice thing.
That's rather uncommon, right? Because Jenkins has generally ignored the mobile user because most of the people who care about it are developers sitting on developer desktops or developer laptops. And as a developer on a desktop or a laptop, I'm not going to accept a narrow screen. I have to have a wide screen because I use it for context. I use it for information. And so for me, the mobile experience was always barely on my radar. And if we look at use and consumption of the Jenkins IO website for documentation, same thing. Mobile is not as big a deal. This card layout is a nice addition for mobile uses for those times when you need to talk to Jenkins over mobile.
Which was my case today. It's like, hey, I need to go check one of the builds I had running last night. And just it was like, oh, I can do that. It's like, oh, this is a much better experience than before. So thumbs up. We'll come back to build with parameters as well once we go in there. This, we will also show the icon legend. Actually, you know what? Let's just go ahead and go in there.
Great.
Because I think this list is a very visual list. more than a little bit than normal, I think.
Right.
Oh, that's the old one. Sorry. I have old and new. Let's just focus on new here for just a second. Do I know how to type in a password? Yes, I do. There we go. Okay. Legends. Let's go ahead and create a new item. I'm going to create a test pipeline. Click OK, because otherwise what I'm looking for here doesn't show up yet. And we'll do this, and we'll come back and do parameters in a minute. Okay. Go back here to the top. Icon legend. The icons have always been an interesting thing to see and understand. But now we get this nice curved. Steve Jobs would be happy because it's a curved corner.
Well, because it looks like an elegant thing that keeps your focus right on top, and you've got an obvious X in the top right-hand corner to get rid of. It looks and feels like the kind of thing you'd expect from a modal dialog in a modern application.
Yep, it's very reasonable. So that is what this item was. Revamp the icon legend as a modal.
Right.
Makes a lot of sense. Refresh the design of the About page. Let's go take a look at the old About page. Where are we here? About Jenkins. Still nicer than way it used to be a long time ago. Right.
This is
Still better.
an improvement. Absolutely.
But now it's here. Now it's even different. So not left, it's up top. So now you can take advantage of the full width.
Right.
We still have sort of the tab metaphor here. But there's also one other small thing here. I don't know if you're catching it or not. There's this Get Involved link that has never been there before.
Cool.
So that's there now. That's About. Were there any other quick visuals I want to show before we go anywhere else? I think
So further down, there's the Hide the Restart Jenkins checkbox that isn't really a visual, but I think is worth a discussion.
Okay.
So the point there is that Jenkins has the concept of restart, right? I install new plugins. I update a plugin. It offers, would you like to click this checkbox to restart? However, there are environments where that restart action is actually not available and doesn't work. So the poor user would click the checkbox and wonder why it didn't do the job. So now at least it's hidden away that if it can't be done by Jenkins, so you'll have to restart yourself, it won't show a restart checkbox.
Oh. Interesting. Okay. I want to talk about this one too, because this was interesting. Simplifying loading of JavaScript and CSS. There's a whole lot. Prototype.js, there was a big blog post about that came out, at least at the time we're doing this. I believe it was last week before last.
Right.
This isn't directly associated with that, but it's in the same family.
Very much in the same family, right?
Yeah.
This is even more interesting than Prototype.js for me because it's the complete removal of an obsolete library, and the removal is done, right? The Prototype.js work, it's going to take us several releases to get rid of it. This thing is done, and that's why it's in the upgrade guide.
Right. And we'll get more into that when we get back over there. Default connection is now WebSocket instead of HTTP.
Yeah.
Why are you so happy about that?
Because it means I can dodge the must open a separate port thing. WebSocket is a very nice way to do stuff, and I like it. So.
Now, you could have always specified WebSocket in the past. It just wasn't default.
Right. Correct.
Okay. Copy. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about this while we're here. And then we'll go back over and take a look at some of these other changes that you need to see. So what is this user experimental flags about?
Yeah, so our security officer, Vadek Follonier, realized that there are times when Jenkins really needs the ability to optionally allow a capability to be enabled or disabled. Concept is usually called feature flagging. It's a way of saying, I want this feature or don't, with a default condition on or off, What he did was he provided these user experimental flags, and those experimental flags can be disabled or enabled. And if I recall correctly, it's even per user. So certainly it's also system-wide, but the experimental flag now is going to be used in an upcoming release to let us turn on and off certain features, letting users decide, do they want this feature on or off?
Well, and the key to this is these flags are actually in the UI,
Correct.
which is different. We've always had flags in the past for startup parameters. You could pass in a -D,
Right.
and if it knew what that was, you could enable or disable something. But now, by moving it up into the UI, now that means it's just an on or off type
Correct.
feature.
It's a usability thing. It's much the same kind of a positive usability experience as I remember having early with Jenkins when I discovered that Jenkins would show me its log files right in its own user interface, right? Being able to control from the UI, from the web page, anywhere, whether or not these flags are on is a good feature.
Yep. One more thing before we get here. I totally missed this one. Running pipeline build logs can now be displayed across controller restarts without reloading in some environments. Nice catch there to sort of like,
Right.
just in case. Why is this even a thing?
Well, so pipelines, one of the features of pipeline is the ability to survive across a restart. If the agent that's running the pipeline continues running, when the controller stops and restarts, the controller will reconnect to the agent and continue the execution and continue the collection of the log files. However, there were cases in this issue report where that restart would lose that log file. So if you show that phrasing again, it's not perfect still. There are still times when a controller restart may cause the build logs to not be to continue
Just pick
streaming.
back up.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, and it's the fact that agents have their own life cycle is really a cool capability. It says, yeah, I can in fact restart my controller, and pipelines that are running on those agents can continue running.
Okay, let's see. Is there anything else we want to just talk about? Fix the writing of emojis to XML. That one is related down to probably this, the job
Right.
DSL. Those were
Right.
probably brother-sister type scenarios. This one we talked about on the last video because this was a backport into .3 if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
Was it?
a variant of it? A variant of it was brought back. It was not, or it was discussed because
Discussed, right.
Right, we had some discussion about do we need it or don't we?
Right. And then fix warning icon. Okay. Full width filter. Okay. That's okay. These are great. All nice and small. Most of these were quality of life, I guess, would be the way to
Yes.
do these. None of these were massive. This one was actually interesting. And again, watch the other video for more details about this because it's much longer conversation. Okay, simplifying the names of the settings in Manage Jenkins. Before, we'll just do that. There's system configuration. So configure system, manage plugins, global tool configuration, manage node and cloud. Look, always a mouthful. Now,
Always.
system, tools, plugins, nodes and clouds.
Yep. Security, credentials, it's a nice simplification down to, we know you're in the context of configuring your system. Therefore, using the word configure or manage or update or modify in the titles of those cards is kind of redundant.
The verbs were unnecessary.
Right, exactly. Very good.
Even though I went to look for configure global security and was like, wait, where is it? Where is it? And I went, oh no, it's the same thing. It's just because I hadn't read all the notes yet and had lost track. Refresh the build parameters interface. So let's do this. Let's go back over to this job that I had just started up on 401. Actually, do you want to do one on an old one to see what it is, or do we care?
Either is fine. Let's We certainly want to see it on the new, so let's show it there.
Okay, and I'm going to be lazy. Actually, no, I didn't want to do that. Let's say, okay, I'm going to be lazy. Pipeline syntax, declarative directive generator, because who can remember syntax these days?
Right? You
Add-
shouldn't remember syntax these days.
Nope, string, and let's see. I'm going to call this QERTY. That's going to be the name, and QERTY. If you do this in a real pipeline, somebody's not going to like you very much. Parameters. Okay, let's close. Okay, wait a minute. Where am I? Oh, that's interesting. Why did that not open in a new tab? Okay, let's paste that in, save, run it once.
All right, so now it will parse the parameter definition.
Parse it, load it.
And now the second time,
Build
build with
parameters.
parameters. There you go.
Okay.
And notice that icon, that build button.
Yeah. Wow.
And the entry fields, it's a better feel. Now, if you were to do the same thing on 2.387, it will have a very different feel to it.
Yep. Because I just did 2 videos about that a couple of days ago. And it was like,
Right.
oh, yep. And from there, functionally, it's exactly the same. It's just changing that
Correct.
look and feel
It's
up.
just a look and it is a look and feel thing. I should never use the word just as some sort of disclaimer. Look and feel is amazingly difficult to do, and Jan and Tim and Alex and others have done a great job on the look and feel.
Yes, I asked for forgiveness because there's no way I could even.
Right.
My look and feel starts with open HTML tag, close HTML tag. That's about as far as I can get.
Yep.
Not there anymore. Okay, so that was build parameters.
Mm-hmm.
We already did the legend. Let's talk about, oh, and by the way, the health score so far is looking pretty good.
Yes, it is.
32,
Yep.
0 and 0, so far so good. Let's take a look at the upgrade guide. Because.
Right.
So we've already talked about the simplified loading. Side effect of this, though, is 2 plugins. If you're running these 2 plugins, you need to upgrade. Otherwise, it's going to be an unpleasant experience, or is it just non-functional?
You know, I didn't explore it to see. This one is one of those where the general guidance is, please upgrade your plugins when you upgrade Jenkins Core. Inevitably, we get a number of reports from people who upgraded Jenkins Core and didn't bother to upgrade their plugins, and that choice was painful for them, right? Most people who are using Jenkins Core and upgrading it are also upgrading their plugins. If you leave the plugins behind, you're choosing to sacrifice the testing that other people have been doing in the configuration. Wow.
That was.
Sorry, yes. Oh boy, my English grammar has failed again.
It is Monday somewhere.
Yeah.
Or is it? I don't know. That's a whole nother existential conversation of, is it Monday somewhere? Don't know, probably. And then we've already talked about WebSocket becoming default. Where could this actually hurt somebody?
Well, so if they had previously depended on the former default HTTP and
Right.
don't have it anymore, or that's the kind of thing where they might have some script sitting somewhere that was looking for a different thing and they couldn't use it.
So for me, anytime I'd written scripts to do this type of interaction, I had always specified which mode I wanted anyway. I actually never trusted the defaults
Right.
because I want to know how I'm connecting. I don't want it to be left up to chance.
Well, and that's actually a very healthy behavior, particularly because the arguments to the command line interface are dependent on that mode. If I'm using -SSH, I've got to use different ways of providing the secret material than if I'm using -HTTP.
Right. So, fortunately, another short upgrade guide, and really pretty not exciting, which is always good as well.
Right.
Unless you had these 2 plugins, or you were doing not like what I would do and just run the CLI by itself.
Right.
Okay. Is that it? Did we actually get through it that fast?
We did. It's really.
Is there anything else?
I,
Oh, there is.
okay.
I got a bone to pick with somebody.
Okay. Go ahead.
So it's this one. Move set node temporarily online offline to app bar.
Uh-huh.
So unfortunately, I did not set up agents for these.
That's okay. Create one. Let's define an agent. We don't need it. It doesn't need.
Oh, that's true. It doesn't have to actually be there. Yeah.
Right.
So I'll just do this and that because it'll just sit there and churn. Okay. So I'll do this. I'll just keep doing it the way I always do things because I have muscle memory for these kinds of things. And non-verifying. Okay. And it'll fail, which is fine. And if we come back over to, that's the old one, here's the new one. Let's go here and here. New node.
New node, top right-hand corner.
I'm going to name it even more incorrectly. That doesn't even matter here. And nope, don't want that. Do that. Also notice there's been more advanced things happening too, which has been interesting. Okay. So here, going back to our LTS, move set node temporarily online offline to the app bar. So classically, what you would see is you would go here, and here's your online offline. Right? This is what it's referring to.
Okay.
I'm asking.
Oh, I think so. Yes. Mark this node temporarily offline. Yep. I think so.
Right? So there's that.
Uh-huh.
But if I come over here now, it's still in the same place.
Oh, so maybe
What am I
maybe
thinking?
I'm wrong there. Yeah. And they're both. I'll have to do some more research
Yeah.
there, and I confess I'm not sure on this one.
And I might be, because I also run weekly, I may be confusing it with one of the changes that I saw this week of refreshing, which was very different. So maybe
I'll
I'm
have to do some
crossing the
research.
streams.
I am not sure. That's a good one for me to go. Look, why don't you open up that
Yeah, we'll get a
issue?
minute.
Let's read the issue in Jira and let's make some speculation while we're here.
Y'all don't have anywhere else to be, right? You want to hang out with us for a little bit?
No, hey, won't take long.
No. After upgrading, bring back the node online. Under is no longer clickable. Okay. So it was a Z index for something. So, but it was basically for, it's the bring the node back online. So because I'm not actually able to
Okay.
connect,
Which
I
may
can't-
hint that the changelog is wrong, and we need to fix the changelog, right? We need to fix the description
Maybe.
in the changelog.
maybe. I think if I could have actually connected to the agent, I think we would have seen the differences. But since I
okay.
don't have an agent, it's fine.
Right.
It's, okay. It's probably okay because I can see this definition in my head. It makes sense.
Great.
Actually, here, let's try this. We'll mark it, do that. So this is on 83. If I come here, no, it's still pretty much the same here,
Yeah.
I think, right? Because if we do, those look the same. Yeah, there's actually
Whoops.
no movement over there. So
Hang on just a minute. Are both of them 401? No.
this is
surely-
401, this is
Here's
387.
Yeah. Okay. No idea.
So I was watching for, and I closed 401. Oh, or 387. That's fine. Anyway, that's that. Is there anything else, just to make sure before we leave? Restore new node, which was important. This was interesting because this was associated to something that had changed with agents a while back. And now this got bumped up to 60 seconds. I thought that had come in the last release.
And again, it's
Maybe.
click through the issue and let's look at it and see, because I did not verify that specific one myself. So, oh, you're right. So that's just an error in the changelog.
Okay.
There it says that it was fixed in 387.2. So
Fixed, yeah.
that's my mistake in assembling the changelog.
Yep, that's okay. And this was 387.1.
Yeah, that one I'll have to, well, I may have just made another mistake in the changelog. Good, thank you.
More work for Mark today.
Well,
I keep
well,
finding things for this release, but I'm
well,
not
and
meaning to. I'm really not
that's what
trying
I
to.
get for not doing a good enough job on the changelog.
Let's actually look at these last two, just real quickly. So upgraded Spring framework, just because, right? It's available. We can quickly, unlike how many years ago now? Maybe 2 years ago. That wasn't so easy.
Right, right. There was
Actually,
a time
Spring
when
framework
we were running,
was harder.
there was a time when we were running our own forked copy of some of these components, and
Right.
now we're running standard components, and when they upgrade, it's very healthy for us to upgrade.
Yep. Which is what I wanted you to say, basically. It's like there were newer versions for this. We had time to bake them in, let them run, and off it goes. Now, whether these are the latest at this point in time as we're talking, don't know. But at the time of building this, they were the latest.
Right.
So security, name off the other
Right.
things that
Well, if
all adds
nothing
up.
else, it avoids there are plenty of people who have relatively simple security scanners that look for the presence of an exact library version. And if that library version exists, they raise a flag that then someone has to waste time saying, oh, that's not an issue. In this case, by using current library version, we dodge those sort of warnings.
until the scanner's updated. Did I say that out loud?
Exactly.
Okay. I think that's it. I think we've covered everything for this release.
Mm-hmm.
So in 4 weeks, that will be June 29th, I believe. We should be back because that would be today's the 1st. So yeah, it should be June 29th, which is also doing a release right before the holidays.
Right,
least
right
the
before the
holidays in the
U.S.
States.
Independence Day holiday, right?
Right.
Yep.
To where we said to Britain,
Careful, careful.
see ya.
Yes.
That's always very funny because we work with people that live in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, hey, we're going to be on holiday next week. I'm like, why? Because.
Just because.
Just because. We're being polite.
Mm-hmm.
I won't go any further than that.
Right.
I think that's about as political as I can get.
That's
It's always
a very
fun.
fair level
It's
of political. 200-year-old politics is pretty good.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else we need to talk about before? So let's think about this. So Maintainer Month just finished up. That was a GitHub sponsored thing.
Did, right.
By the way, Mark, since we were here last, congratulations. You won an award at CDCon.
Right. Thank you. Yes.
I believe that's there. It's never too early to start thinking about Hacktoberfest.
Right.
By the way, that
Well,
comes in October.
And we've got a really cool blog post actually that's a great preview to Hacktoberfest. You could start on it now. Basil Crow did a blog post on Prototype.js and how to do replacements of things that use Prototype. So Prototype is this 13-year-old JavaScript library, and in the world of JavaScript, 13 years old is like centuries. So this 13-year-old JavaScript library that Jenkins core was delivering and is used widely. Well, in order to get rid of it, they've started the project. Basil and Tim Jacome together have been doing this amazing work to get rid of Prototype.js. And what Basil did was he wrote a blog post that describes how anybody can help with this by picking up one or more plugins and working on removing Prototype from that plugin. It's easily isolated work. Basil describes the techniques, how you test it interactively to be sure it did what you expected. It's a great piece of work that he did, and the Prototype.js removal is going to be a multi-month project. There's an awful lot of work to do. And in an interesting twist for Jenkins, it's JavaScript. It's not Java. It's really JavaScript and front end. So if you're interested in JavaScript and front end, the Prototype.js removal is a cool experience.
And in fact, what we have here is the blog post. It's on Jenkins.io. So just go to blog, and it's came out on May 12th. And in Basil fashion, it's long. Sorry, Basil, if you're watching.
That's the
but
nature of
it
being
goes into much
precise.
detail. It's
Exactly.
very, very precise.
Yep.
It's not. How can I say this? I don't believe it's hard work, but it's very detailed work.
Well, and it requires interactive testing, which is the nature of most JavaScript changes. You've got to be sure that you executed the code you modified in order to assure that it's behaving the way you expected it to. So you get to learn how to use the JavaScript debuggers that are inside the web browsers. It's a really cool experience.
Your definition of cool and my definition of cool are completely different things. I do want to stay here on the blog here for a second, since we do have a couple minutes today. One thing we had mentioned, Maintainer Month was last month. GitHub sponsors the Jenkins project. I do want to go ahead and give them a shout out on this, because the Jenkins CI GitHub org has over 2,600 repositories.
Right.
If you've never seen that number before, that's a lot, by the way. A
That
million
is.
plus lines of code. The issue, it's funny, we have 20,000 plus issues, but we use Jira for issue tracking.
We use both.
We use both.
And plugins have the option to decide which form of issue tracking they want to use. So it's a good mix. This one is a nice feature that has already benefited me. So what they did is they gave us access to GitHub Enterprise features as an open source project. One of those features is described up above on this thing called Autolink.
Okay.
And what it does is when I put in a reference to a Jira issue, it automatically converts it into a hyperlink to the issue.
Oh, that's nice.
And I seriously, the number of times I've had to go in and insert Markdown to allow myself to get a link to that. And this makes it, I don't have to think about Markdown anymore for bug links. They just work.
Yep. One more I want to call out, because I think this, and of course, we're right now starting GSOC 2023. So that'll be ongoing. But this came out this week.
It did.
And in fact, 2 days ago. If you're running, where's our list? Red Hat 7, or any of the derivatives, CentOS 7, Alma 7,
Yeah.
you name it 7.
Thankfully, Alma 7 doesn't exist, but
Oh, I thought it did.
CentOS 7, Scientific
Oh, you're
Linux
right.
7, Oracle Linux 7, and I'm sure there are others that aren't enumerated, but those are the ones I know. If you're running one of those, get off them as soon as you possibly can.
Right.
This is a Mark Waite passion point, because there are painful workarounds that certain Jenkins plugins that I maintain have to do in order to survive and work reasonably on this ancient operating system. The sooner you get off of it, the sooner you get the benefit of modern operating systems. So get off the Red Hat 7 derivatives. It's already ending life in June of 2024, no matter what. But for Jenkins, in November of 2023, it's gone, right? We will not support Red Hat 7 or CentOS 7 or Scientific Linux 7 after that date.
So you got 5 months.
Right, exactly.
5 months to move.
And that for me already felt too long, but it felt like we needed to wait until we had a full LTS cycle to inform users. So this gives us a full LTS to inform users, and then it's done for us.
Right. And by the way, I was thinking Rocky 7, not Alma 7. But that's
And that one I don't recognize either. I'm not sure I'd seen it, but it may exist.
no, there is a Rocky 7. Fedora, again, same thing. So the rest of these are actually variations on a theme. So
They
the
are,
Red
and-
Hat was, this is different. This is a little bit different than how the project has worked in the past. We're pulling the date early on the 7 line.
Exactly, and that is different, right? That's why it's highlighted first, because if we follow usual Jenkins project patterns, it would wait all the way to June of 2024.
Correct.
And we're pulling the plug early on this one because it's such a pain to support.
We could probably do a whole nother show just about that one.
Right. There are
which we
enough
won't.
issues hiding in that thing that we got to get off of it.
But anyway, Fedora 36,
Right.
gone.
Yeah.
Ubuntu 18 is gone
Right.
as of yesterday.
As of yesterday, correct.
And then Alpine Linux gone beginning of the month or last month.
Right, and Alpine, actually nobody should be running Jenkins on Alpine 3.14 because we stopped delivering those container images on 3.14. Must have been 18 months
Long
ago
time
or
ago.
more.
Yeah.
But just in case, hey, right now we're delivering based on Alpine 3.18. So you can tell how old 3.14 is.
Right. So I think the big one of this, and okay, here's the whole thing. Was this new monitor? Okay, this monitor comes into play in the next LTS
In the
line,
next
correct?
baseline, right. So
Next baseline, so in 3 months.
weekly users see it now. It's already visible to weekly users. But users who are not on weekly, but are rather on LTS, won't see it until the next baseline is selected and delivered. So not 2.401, but 2.413 or 414, whatever number it is that's
Yeah.
chosen.
So that'll be
August.
okay, July. Oh no, August. You're right, because the third one will happen in July this year.
Right.
Because we get 2 releases in June this year because of.
Is that right? Let's see. Yeah, right. That is correct.
Well, actually, no, that's not because we released yesterday.
Yeah, so we
So,
get one in
31st
dot two
June.
in June, dot 3 in July.
July. So it'll be August. Okay.
I think it's August.
Okay. Which you said beginning August 23rd.
I think so. But again, my calendar math is weak at best.
So is Java's calendar math. Did I say that out loud?
Oh, you do not want to talk about calendars. That is the wrong conversation.
By the way, have you started playing with Java 21 yet?
Not yet. Been using Java 20.
Tasty, tasty. All right. So anyway, I think that's it. I think we've covered everything and more. I did want to talk about, I had actually forgotten about it when I went to look up the blog post from Basel. Then it's like, oh yeah, that OS. We need to be talking about that more and more. So the big deal there is if you're running on any of the Red Hat 7 derivatives, CentOS 7, doesn't matter, start your plan to move off of that.
Right.
And I'm going to go ahead and say, I'm going to ask the question because I haven't actually asked it anywhere else. Obviously, we're talking about the controller.
Yes.
Are we also talking about agents?
We are, but we don't have an elegant way to tell people that we've detected that their agent operating system is end of life. I hope we'll eventually develop such a thing, but right now we don't have a good way to tell people, whoa, the agent you just started is on an unacceptable OS. We also we've got the version node monitors that helps us tell people if they're using an outdated remoting version, but even that's certainly an area we could do more usability improvements.
Okay. So we should be back in 4 weeks unless something slips. I hope it doesn't slip. If it slips, it needs to slip 2 weeks. That's all I'm going to say.
Mr. I think national holidays are to be honored in the United States, huh?
Well, I just know I won't be around here.
Right.
So I just don't want to be working that day or that week if I can help it.
Okay.
We'll figure that out. If not, hey, life goes on. Well, who knows where I would be at that point? That would be an interesting show to do. All right. Thanks, everybody, for being here with us this week. Before you leave, if you don't mind, go ahead and do all the YouTube things, like video, subscribe if you haven't subscribed, because we have videos coming out Tuesdays, Thursdays, sometimes on Wednesdays. Mark and I imagine, we'll be doing another series this year. We haven't done a series in probably 14 months.
Yeah.
It's been a while since we've done a series.
I think we're going to do another series. I have a hunch we've got some Hacktoberfest stuff. We may do a Prototype JS series. We've got a series in the pocket somewhere.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for being here, and we will talk to you again in 4 weeks. And let's do this outro the correct way.